how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. I would love to hear in the comments below where you lean in terms of your preferences around knives. But I have here two knives, both built by We Knife Company. One is the We Knives Arrakis, designed by Elijah Isham. The other is the We Knives 037. Can't remember who the designer is. I apologize for that. But we did talk about it in the full review, so go over there and check it out, and I'll mention his name over there. Both very well put together knives, both highly appealing, both knives that I actually like quite a lot. However, these could not possibly be more different. I guess they could. The only way they could be more different is if we had the Eschaton here instead of the Arrakis. The Arrakis is essentially a slightly more usable edition of the Eschaton. Okay. So we have these two knives, and what I would suggest to you is that we have very close to the most practical, most usable knife from We Knife Co. and the least practical, or maybe second least practical, second least usable knife from We Knife Co. Again, I like both of these. I like them for very different reasons. I'm happy to be able to share them with you. And I know that you guys watching will have very different takes on these two knives. So let me go ahead and work my way through this with you. And primarily, we're going to discuss here the difference between function and form. The 037 is a design purely driven by function. It really is like the designer here set out to create the most functional cutting tool that he possibly could, and he did a fantastic job of it. In this case, the Arrakis, Elijah Isham has set out to build one of the most visually interesting and attractive knives that he possibly could, while still trying to maintain a level of utility. And that is a very, very difficult balance to strike, especially in a knife like this. Okay, this knife is really over the top. Okay, and so I actually will submit that I think Elijah has done a very, very impressive job in getting this to a knife that is as functional as it even is. Okay, so let's go ahead and start kind of breaking this down. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm not going to spend so much time on, the size and weight and all that kind of stuff, because these are very different knives. And if you just want those kind of numbers, go and watch my review of either one of these. This one hasn't posted yet, but it'll be out there soon. And there are other reviews. In this video, we're going to talk a little more about what makes these so different and what elements make this so perfectly functional and detract from the functionality of this one, and how all of that kind of works out in terms of our own preferences. And perhaps we'll find some principles here that we can apply in other places. Certainly, I think at the very least, we'll be able to appreciate these two very cool, very impressive knives. So let's start off with the blade. Interestingly enough, they have some similar features. Okay, both of these are M390 steel. Both of them are actually pretty thin behind the edge, and both of them are flat ground. Then that's going to be, and both of them do have a bit of a finger choil, and that's going to be about where the similarities end. After that, in the 037, we have this long, slim blade, very thin, very nicely ground, not super thick stock either. This is a blade that will absolutely cut. It is designed to be a cutting tool, and cut it will. It doesn't matter whether you're in the kitchen, whether you're doing sort of outdoor stuff, whether it's in a tactical type of role, whatever the case may be. If you need to cut something, this knife will do it extremely well, and for that I absolutely love it. On the other hand, we have another knife here, same steel, similar edge geometry, but that's where it ends. We still have a flat grind, but it's not a high flat grind, meaning that especially in this portion of the blade, you've got a pretty big wedge effect. That is, instead of cutting, I'm trying to do this so you can see. So, if you've got a thin blade like this, well, here you've got a pretty thick wedge. It's going to be ground like an axe, especially down here. In addition to that very thick grind, you've also got this giant cutout. So if you are cutting with this portion of the blade, let's say, imagine I'm cutting through my fingers representing the material there, you're going to be doing a lot of work, and then you're going to come up here and you're going to get all tangled up and gummed up in this area right here because the grind sort of ends in such a way that there's good potential for material to get snagged up in here. Now, I will say there's a bit of a mitigating factor here in that I usually use this choked up, which means I'm actually only using this portion of the blade. That is a different discussion, but it does have a little bit of an impact on what happens when you're cutting with this knife. So between the two of these, you can see, this blade is just all about being as functional as it can possibly be. And they've done a great job of achieving that. Okay, they really have. This slices like crazy. Next up, and here's where we'll get into the point I was making a second ago. When you do need to cut something, when you do go to use this blade, this one feels so natural. You can get a good hold of it. You can choke up if you want to do something more detailed. You've got a big generous choil here. And the relationship between the blade and the handle is very natural, and it just feels very easy. When you go to cut something, you just sort of know what to do. There's no kind of fumbling around. There's no thinking about it. It just, you pick it up and do it. On the other hand, this knife, when you first grab it, it sort of takes some thinking because you kind of say, well, there's a finger choil. Maybe this is how I'm supposed to hold the knife. When you hold it like that, it kind of cants the knife on an awkward angle. It also gives very little leverage. So if you really had to do some kind of hard push task, you've got quite a moment arm created here, and you're holding like the very back thin portion of the knife, which doesn't do much for you. I will say this, choked up, so if I move up here, and there's a really, really nice little finger swale here for my thumb. So it is, I will say, it seems that Elijah really seemed to emphasize this particular grip in the design. So from here, if I go to cut something, it is, yes, a little more natural, but I lose quite a bit of effective cutting edge because, imagine if I'm going to cut this, it's going to run into my thumb right away. So I'm really only going to be using the last 1.5 to 2 inches of the blade out here. Okay, which is fine, but then you got to ask, what is all this edge even doing here? All right, and so in terms of sort of that relationship between the handle and the blade, the 037 is very natural, very normal, exactly what you'd expect to see. Well, the Arrakis presents a little bit of a challenge there. Moving on to the handle. Now listen, the handles on these are, look, you've got to admit, guys, this is an incredible piece of artwork. It really is. And I've carried this and used it and shown it to a few friends, and people are blown away by this knife. They're like, what is that? So if you want a knife that's going to get you some real looks, that's going to get lots of attention on Instagram, that looks beautiful, and it really does. And I'm not being facetious here, guys. There is something to an aesthetically pleasing knife, and I value that a great deal, and I know many of you do as well. Okay, and this is a beautiful, beautiful knife. It really, truly is. What's interesting about this is that both of these knives have some pretty intricate milling, okay, and a lot of extra touches of detail. The difference is the detail on this is very, very obvious. The detail on this is not very obvious because it wasn't an effort to show off that detail. It was an effort to make a highly functional knife. And so a couple little things like the way this back is put together. So there's no backspacer here. These are milled so that they fit together and this screw goes down through. It's really, really impressive. And then if you look internally, this is so aggressively milled out that it's incredible. And they've made this so lightweight. So this weighs only 4 ounces because of that very extensive and rather aggressive milling. They've even milled out around the clip here. So the clip sits lower and is much more comfortable when holding it in hand, yet it still works very well. Now, obviously the milling here is very extensive as well. And boy, it does lighten up the knife. It lightens it up extensively to the point that this gets down to, I don't know, about 3.7 ounces, I believe. So yeah, very lightweight. But the detail here is very much on display. Okay, the detail here is right in your face, and you can see that a great deal of work and thought has gone into this, and it's impressive. It truly is. Now, let me mention the clip here is also recessed, okay, only it's not done quite as well. At the very least, I feel like they should have. So over here where they've done this little pattern, it looks really, really cool. But what's happening on this side is the clip is landing right on one of these cross pieces. They could have at least, I think, filled in that one little piece. Maybe that would take away from the looks. I don't know, but I don't know. Anyway, they could have done something a little different here to allow this to be slightly more accessible. And here's where the practical difference comes. When you put these two in your pocket, this one, you can get it in your pocket. It's not as, I've heard some reviewers say, like, it just can't go in pocket. It can't come out. I've had maybe a little bit of a problem with it with some really heavy 511s, but outside of that, I've had no problem getting this in and out of pocket. This, though, goes in and out of pocket very quickly and easily. It works really, really nicely, and they've done a great job of balancing this where they haven't done quite as good a job. And again, it demonstrates what we're talking about here. This is very much built toward being a usable knife. It's extremely practical. Everything they've done is about being practical. Here, practicality is second, okay? The primary thing here is to design a piece of artwork, which is beautiful. I have to admit, guys, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous knife. Truly impressive piece of machining and design work. But the design work has gone into presentation, where here the design work has gone into practicality. All right, so I like both of these an awful lot. I think you can tell that I like both of them a lot. I really do. However, if you want to know which one is more useful and carryable, which one is a better cutting tool, be like, it's so blatantly easy to say this one that it's not even worth talking about. Okay, so this is absolutely a nearly perfect cutting tool. It really is exceptional, and perhaps this is a knife that'll go on my list for in fact, this will go on my list for best knives of 2019, but I think it may get a special place as sort of the most overlooked or maybe the most misunderstood knife of 2019 or something, because this knife is amazing in terms of what they've been able to do from a functional standpoint. This knife, still amazing, just for different reasons. It's beautiful and it's interesting and it's intricate. And I have to give a lot of credit to Elijah and the guys at WE. I don't know how, I don't know how the dialogue between the two goes on, but to get a knife that looks insane as this looks, but is still as functional as this is very, very impressive. And and Elijah, you deserve a lot of credit for pulling off an extremely cool design here. So there we go, guys. So we've got this really interesting comparison where a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of energy and quality are put into both of these knives, and the end result is so different that it's a, I don't know, to me it's just a really interesting comparison to sort of think through, okay, because of there's a lot of details that are very impressive on both of these, just utilized in such completely different ways. So there you go, guys. Go over to White Mountain Knives. I believe I got both of these at White Mountain Knives. Justin always has a good stock of WE stuff over there. Use my discount code SHARPSTUFF, and these are expensive knives, so that'll save you a substantial amount, 10%, but this is like $300, so that saves you $30, which is not nothing to sneeze at. So there you go. Use my discount code. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.